put this in front of you. You can move around.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming here today as we lay wreaths at Place Joler, a monument that has been forgotten for a long time, but in light of recent events has brought new life and new memories and knowledge to the people of our community and to this country. And as such, I thought it was fitting to be able to recognize and be here today to lay wreaths to honor William Joler, Henry Gagney, Louis Gagney, and Alexander Gagney, who all gave their lives for our freedom and were honored with this monument here. Interestingly enough, a lot of people didn't know the history of this monument. After the flood of 1955, when the road was moved, this ended up in the middle of a parking lot. But years back, when they would have Memorial Day celebrations, this area would be filled with thousands of people. It was in the middle of one of the busiest intersections there was, and it was a place of great honor. The place itself, Place Joler, for those French, place of a happy heart or a beautiful heart, was dedicated for William Joler, a World War I veteran, came from Canada, moved here to Woonsocket, worked in the woolen mills, as so many of our family and some here did. And when the war broke out, he went to fight to defend this country. Not the country of his home, but this became his home. Woonsocket became his home, and this is what he was going to fight for. He was part of the Moussagon offensive in France. Woonsocket, and a lot of people wonder why Ferdinand Foch, the Grand Marshal of the Allied forces in World War I, why he came here to dedicate this in November of 1921. Woonsocket sent the first contingent of soldiers from the United States to fight in the French offensive. And as such, Marshal Foch wanted to recognize that specifically by coming here to Woonsocket. And when you read the historical accounts of when this place was first dedicated, the streets were lined several people deep. Soldiers that had returned home from the war stood at attention along the route that his car rode in. There was a choir of about 1,500 children from St. Anne's Parish and St. Louis Parish that stood on the steps of St. Anne's Church and sang as he drove by. They lit flares along the street that lit up the whole area as if it was daytime. And they were here to recognize the Marshal for leading the forces through what people hoped was the last great war. But they were here to recognize not only him, but to pay tribute to our veterans, and specifically William Joler. As time went on, we unfortunately ended up in a Second World War, and Louis Gagney was the youngest son of Bernadette Gagney. He was working on a defense project in Newfoundland. He got notice that his father had died suddenly. He came back home very quickly aboard a U.S. Navy plane to be here with his family as they buried their father and their husband. He stayed here for a few weeks with his mother and then began the return trip back to Newfoundland aboard the boat Caribou, the SS Caribou. The Caribou was sunk by a Nazi torpedo off the coast of Newfoundland. And Louis Gagney lost his life and his body was lost at sea, only weeks after burying his father. The Gagney family unfortunately was struck with tragedy again as the U.S. forces were invading the Philippines and trying to retake land there. The Battle of Leyte Island was under heavy attack, and Alexander Gagney was part of the offensive, and under heavy fire lost his life. The second son of Mrs. Gagney was lost. As the war was dying down, there were still holdouts, Japanese holdouts, on the island of Guam. Henry Gagney had already served two stints in the military and had re-enlisted, and ended up on the island of Guam to continue the efforts there. And he was found dead one morning.
That's his private plane.
Mrs. Gagney lost all three sons to the war. If the story ended there, it would be enough to give us all pause. But Mrs. Gagney, who lost everything, devoted the rest of her life to the veterans organizations throughout this city and throughout this area, and to the Gold Star mothers of the country. The number of Gold Star mothers that have 3 stars is very few. But she cherished that because she knew, in one of the newspaper articles when she was honored at the synagogue here in the city, she said that she continued this work because it was what her husband and her sons would have wanted. She lived to be 96 years old. She died in 1980 after spending the entire life that she had after the losing her family dedicated to the veterans and the memory of her children. And as such, it is all the more fitting that we are here today to not only remember her sons and William Joler, but also for her. Because for every name that we see on monuments throughout this country that symbolizes a life lost, that is also a son that was lost. And I think it is all the more fitting that we lay and dedicate one of the wreaths here today for Mrs. Gagney, who gave her sons for us. So as we celebrate this Memorial Day and pay tribute to all of those soldiers that gave their lives for the very freedom that we are able to sit here and speak under today, it's important for us. And as I said earlier today in the other ceremony, Abraham Lincoln in his Gettysburg Address said that it now falls upon the living to continue the work of the soldiers that gave their lives. And it is why we're here today, to continue that work and pay tribute to those young men that gave their lives for us, and to a mother that gave it all. So, on behalf of the City of Woonsocket, I want to thank all of you for coming here today. And I specifically want to thank and pay tribute to these men and their mother that gave their lives for us. And as we sit here, and we all know that there is controversy around this monument now, but I think if anything, it builds our resolve and strengthens our spirit to make sure that we continue to honor these men, because they say that you never know what you have until you lose it. And I think that when we are faced with the threat of losing this dedication to our soldiers, we are standing together to protect it. And I thank all of those that have come forward to help us in this fight. On behalf of the city, thank you. I do want to recognize we have with us Senator Roger Picard that is here today, as well as members of our City Council, Councilman Chris Beauchamp, Councilman Dan Gendron, Councilman Robert Moreau, and our City Council President John Ward. So thank you to all. I'd like to call upon our City Councilman to take one of the wreaths. We'll be placing one wreath over the side here, and then asking our veterans to take the other wreath to the other side. At this time, I would like to call upon Mr. Thomas Payne. He is our Veteran of the Year this year, and I would ask him to close us with benediction.
Make a joyful sound unto the Lord. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with thanksgiving.
Come up.
Know he is the Lord our God. It is he that has made us and not we ourselves. Whoever his people and the sheep of his pasture. Oh, go your way into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and speak good of his name. For his mercy is everlasting and his truth will endure forever. Amen. O Lord, receive the soul of all our departed comrades and assistants, and conduct them into a place thou hast prepared for them in thy heavenly kingdom. And may their souls rest in peace, and light perpetual shine upon them. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. This concludes our ceremony, but I just want to take an opportunity to thank everybody for being here. Because as we realize, today especially, this monument means so much than a cross, or so much more than a controversy over that cross. It symbolizes the lives that protect the freedoms that we have. And especially I want to make mention of their mother, because as she dedicated the rest of her lives, I think it is only fitting for us to continue to dedicate our lives to our veterans and to be good to each other. So in the spirit of that, I thank you all for coming here today, and have a wonderful Memorial Day. Thank you so much.
Yep.